So what? Were they psychos or did they look like psychos? Is that what they look like? They were vampires. Psychos do not explode when sunlight hits them. I don't give a fuck how crazy they are.
Cool guys don't look at explosions. They blow things up and then walk away. Who's got time?
Welcome to the You Guys podcast. I'm Rob, this is Liam. And this week we watched 1996's From Dusk Till Dawn, a film with a screenplay written by Quentin Tarantino and directed by Robert Rodriguez. It starts off as a tense killers and hostages crime drama and develops into something 13-year-old me wasn't expecting, but was here for all day long. Due to some horrific complications, our heroes/villains find themselves trapped in a nest of Mexican vampires. With all that said, the biggest question I have to ask is how the fuck does Sex Machine's crotch gun actually work? I mean, what's pulling the trigger? How does it erect? And how does the codpiece reveal and then conceal the package? In a film where topless vampires are the order of the day, all I can fixate on is that gun. Oh, and also bolt-action crossbows. If you're a vampire, it is a good idea to keep hold of a weapon like that in your store cupboard. And has nobody ever noticed a strip club built on top of a Mayan temple? But finally, how does that fucking goddamn gun operate? Liam, help me out.
No, nobody knows. Nobody knows. It doesn't make any sense. Like, surely it would be the most uncomfortable thing in the world. Where does it come from? Like, the only thing you can think is that his actual dick? Like, that is it. Yeah. I mean, like, at the end of the day, it's like, there can't be anything there for the gun to work, because otherwise his crotch would be kind of like, I don't know, be sticking out half a foot.
Also, isn't the recoil going to turn his nuts into paste?
Yeah, that's going to be an issue as well. I mean, I'm not sure. Wait, no, it does shoot, doesn't it?
Yes, he does shoot the
vampire.
It
totally shoots, because I remember obviously the opening sequence when he's threatening kind of thing. The whole thing with Sex Machine is quite bizarre because he's actually, like, you know, you see him, he's got a fucking whip, he's got a dick gun, he's going to be this total badass. He's actually quite charming. He's a nice, sweet.
Like, he is like when you first watch this film, if you haven't seen it before, and he kills a couple of vampires, he's really nice to Juliette Lewis's character, Kate. Mm-hmm. And then he goes, hi, what's your name, girlie? Oh, I'm Kate. Nice to meet you. I'm Sex Machine. Like, you wouldn't expect that intro to come from him either. And he's meant to be a badass gangster who can control a whip really well, by the way, as well as a dick gun.
To be honest, the whip feels a little bit overboard. You know, if you've got a dick gun, really, you're going to have a whip as well. Like, I feel like usually if you have a whip, that's your thing. You've got a whip. It's like, you've got a dick gun. Surely you've just got a dick gun. That's all you need.
Also, the other question, right, is nobody I know we've gone right to the end of this, but in a strip club where you're vampires and you're pretty supple as a vampire, you're pretty soft. You're pretty easily killable.
Yeah, they got their way to explain that, don't they? The fact that, I think it is. Is it Sex Machine who actually explains that, or he and Fred the Hammer? Is it Fred the Hammer, whatever his name is? They kind of got the way to say, like, they're soft kind of thing, you know, like that explains exploding heads and whatnot.
Before you become vampires, aren't you frisking the bikers and the truckers with their weapons?
Well, that is the thing. I mean, like you say, we have jumped towards the end here, but there's no getting around it. That whole sequence is really bizarre because you have this slow build-up, and it does very much feel like two movies. And I actually, you know, we'll get around to the fact that growing up, and I'm not sure if it was just like a rumor that got out of hand, but I legitimately thought that Quentin Tarantino not only wrote this film, but directed the first half of this film. Yeah. And when you go back and watch it, that totally makes sense because the first half, right from that opening sequence with, is it Ray Parks? And they have that kind of nonsensical kind of conversation. It doesn't need to be there. And they talk about, you know, retards serving food to the public, all very...
Oh, Michael Parks.
Michael Parks,
Ray Parks was...
Darth Maul, yeah. Of course he was, yeah. And all that stuff feels so quintessential Quentin Tarantino. And then, of course, the second half is classic Rodriguez, I suppose.
Yeah, well, even up to the point where right at the beginning of the film, you have they call it a trunk, don't they? The boot shot, where as it's driving along, the boot, and it shows Gloria, the poor bank teller. That is a Tarantino staple as well. He seems to always have that angle.
Oh, there's so many. I mean, there's the Desperado in a very similar sequence. That, I mean, when they walk away from the liquor store after they blow it up, they're walking away. That's like a clear nod to Desperado. Instead of being cool, they're just bickering with each other, but they don't even react, which is
all
very
I could
cool.
think about then was Lonely Island's song with Will Ferrell, "Cool Guys Walk Away from Explosions."
Yeah, absolutely. And funny, what is it? Is it the other guys when the building blows up and they're on the deck? They're like, "Oh my god, there's no way you're walking away from
You know
that."
what? That might have to be our intro music. I might have to cut Predator out now and have "Cool Guys Walk Away from Explosions" as our intro music.
Cool guys walk. And they are very cool. I mean, we'll get on to how cool George Clooney is in this film, and he is unbelievably cool. But I mean, there are like more kind of overt nods, as you say. There's the boot scene, there's the walking away from the explosion, but they also have like big Kahuna burgers are in this from Pulp Fiction, Chongo beer from Desperados in this film. So this is like a love letter not only to blaxploitation and grindhouse pictures and 70s movies, but also to their own movies, basically. I mean, it's just two direct, like a writer and a director having so much fun, and you can totally see it up on
because
screen.
Again, the dick gun is shown in Desperado. Salma Hayek pulls her out of the gun case, and she goes, "Oh, this is interesting." And Antonio Banderas, Desperado himself, says, "This has gotten me out of so many scrapes." So you actually see it there, but then you see it in use in here. So everything comes back to the dick gun.
It certainly does. And to get back to your initial point, sorry, I kind of sidetracked there, about the vampires like not like checking on the bikers. It all seemed like really poorly conceived from them, because you've got to assume, obviously you have that final shot, and again you mentioned at the top that there's like apparently in a Mayan temple. I'm assuming Google Images kind of ruins that for them in a few years later. But whatever. But they've obviously done this any number of times and had a great level of success. So things go so wrong for the vampires so quickly, and things escalate at such a pace in the second half of this film that you're like, is it just it's bad luck for the vampires? Like usually they just come in, they rip everyone's arms off, they kill everyone, everything's great. Only this time they run into George Clooney, what's his name, the Hammer, and Sex Machine. It's just by chance they've got three total badasses in the bar, all at the same time, and that's the problem. So usually they just go in, they clean house, but it's just on this one night, three badasses all just happen to be in there. So they're like, "Oh, we're ready to fight it." And sorry.
Oh, go on. I just say, and it sounds like as well that the reason why it all went to pot was because their leader was taken out really quickly, really easily. That is the thing. Pandemonium.
Oh, Jesus Christ, she is something else. I mean, that is one of the things with this film. I think because of like George Clooney's look in this film, and very much Salma Hayek, like, make no mistake, this is one of the most iconic movies of the 90s. It might not be the most famous, it might not have had the biggest budget, but the iconography from this film lives on. And it was a massive deal back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And a big part of that was Salma Hayek. Like when you saw Salma Hayek with the snake, I mean, that snake, Jesus Christ, the snake is into it as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, is it the sexiest moments ever committed to the screen? I mean, it might be.
Do you know what?
She is so outrageously hot. Like when you see the bar scene and everybody just stops and mouths hit the floor, and the film just goes, "Okay, we're just going to have Salma Hayek dancing with a snake here for the next 3 minutes," and everyone just kind of sits there and quietly goes, "Holy shit, that might be the most beautiful woman who's ever lived."
I agree with you about it being one of the sexiest moments on screen for 3 years. Up until 1999's Dogma, when she's doing it again.
Oh, dude.
Dancing, glasses, pigtails, schoolgirl outfit. It's a Candy Girl. Like she is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that is the center. Obviously that's she is outrageously hot in that scene, but it's played for laughs. I actually saw that scene randomly on TV, or on YouTube. You go on these kind of like journeys.
Yeah. It's on your most played playlist, isn't it?
Dude, I mean, I'd happily admit that. Yeah. But I love the sequence when it's like Jay and Silent Bob are like pulling out kind of like
the money,
$1 notes, and they keep going back and forth, and it all plays into the music. I mean, I keep thinking about Kevin Smith because obviously, I was going to say Ray Parks again. When I think of him, I often think of Kevin Smith films because in his latter directorial career, before he Mike Parks passed away, he was in Tusk, wasn't he?
Oh my God, he was in Tusk.
Which is bad, but it's like he was fantastic. Like one of Kevin Smith's best films is Red, I think.
Yeah, Red State.
Red State, and Michael Park's absolutely fantastic in that. But he's one of a few characters where, I mean, continuity be damned in this. I mean, he dies in this, but he put, we talked about kind of links to other films. That exact character pops up in Kill Bill and Planet Terror.
Yeah.
Like, they're just like, oh, well, he's dead and he belongs from a different film. It doesn't matter. We're just going to bring him back. He is so cool. And the fact that Cheech Marin plays 3 characters in this film, which somehow I just never fucking noticed when I was younger.
I mean, you would notice, I suppose, yeah. I mean, randomly, as Carlos at the end, he looks a little bit taller. I don't know what it is. Maybe he's wearing lifts or something.
Maybe. I should have noticed, though.
You're not going to notice he's pussy guy.
And to be honest, I'm amazed you didn't do the quote at the start. I mean, don't get me wrong, you legitimately picked my second favorite quote because, as I said, Clooney's so cool, but that psychos do not explode when sunlight hits them. I don't care how crazy they are. That is a great fucking line.
Yeah, and I didn't do Clooney justice now, but the pussy like is...
Do you not think it'd be remiss for one of us not to do the full pussy? I'm going to do it. So
you want to do it, don't you? You want to do it? Do it.
Someone should do it. All right, pussy. Come on in, pussy lovers. Here at the Titty Twister, we're slashing pussy in half. Give us an offer and a vast selection of pussy. This is a pussy blowout. All right, we got white pussy, black pussy, Spanish pussy, yellow pussy. We got hot pussy, cold pussy. We got wet pussy. We got smelly pussy. We got hairy pussy, bloody pussy. We got snapping pussy. We got silk pussy, velvet foot pussy, naugahyde pussy. We even got horse pussy, dog pussy, chicken pussy. Come on, you want pussy? Come on in, pussy lovers. If you don't got it, we don't want it. Come on in, pussy lovers. I mean, Jesus Christ, my wife's in the other room, who I always mention on this podcast because she must be thinking, what the fuck? She didn't actually watch this film.
She didn't.
But
also,
there's no escaping the fact that when you think of this film, like, we posted, obviously, a teaser for this movie. All the quotes came back. They were all about pussy lovers.
Yeah.
They were all about snapping pussy and smelly and horse pussy. You just can't escape it. You can't.
I love the fact you even went in with the Mexican accent as well, which...
Dude, if you're gonna do the pussy quote, you've got to do the accent.
I can't do it. As we've learned from our friendship, I can't do accents, so I never try. I am terrible at them.
Well, I'm not going to say I can do accents after I just did that, but like it's just one of those films, and this film is gross. Like, I'm not sure, again, if it gets made in 2022 quite depressingly, because it is demeaning to where, like, every character is a slime ball. I mean, we mentioned Cheech Marin. I mean, his border control, like
oh my God, when he's staring at what, a 17-year-old girl she's meant to be? And
she's on the toilet and he keeps poking his, and, Quentin Tarantino's character, who I don't want to talk about too much because he's very unpleasant. I mean, they don't shy away from it, though. He is an unpleasant rapist. And you do have that weird, I guess, strain in their relationship. It is an understatement, because obviously he loves his brother very much, and his brother has just saved him from prison. But he's like, oh, dude, this isn't the person. He even says, this isn't who I am. Like, he's a dickhead. And George Clooney is fantastic in this role, because he is an asshole. He's so cool and he's so charming that he gets away with it. That whole line at the start, everybody be cool, you be cool. I'll tell you who's fucking cool. George Clooney's cool.
And he tells the truth. He said the only things he cares about is that son of a bitch back there and his money. That's literally all he cares about. And I had 2 questions, right? You mentioned Quentin Tarantino. My first question is, when Quentin Tarantino became a vampire... He's a terrible... He's as bad at being a vampire as Scott Howard's dad is at being a werewolf in Teen Wolf. He is that shit. Does he... Like, in 1996, when he became a vampire, he looked like Quentin Tarantino now in 2022.
He does. I've seen it. I think you sent that picture, didn't you? Of a picture of him as the vampire and him now, and you're like, it's the same guy. It's the same. Like, he's just become a vampire. But I mean, it's one of the issues of this film. Like, you talk about believability. Like, we're willing to go with the fact that there are vampires. Everyone seems to go with the fact that they're vampires very quickly, by the way, in this film. Everyone just seems to accept, it's like, well, I guess there are vampires. Let's just go with it. But one of the big issues was the penis gun. One of the other issues for me was believing that Quentin Tarantino and George Clooney are brothers. I mean, are we looking at like a twin situation, like Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger? Like, Quentin Tarantino is all the shit that's left over. He looks like a piece of shit. He's a piece of shit.
Tarantino's adopted, isn't he? Or one of them's adopted into the family.
He surely has to, because George Clooney is, in fairness, George Clooney, like, I think he was like 35 when he did this film. But the great thing about George Clooney is that, as long as I've known, other than, if you're going back to Attack of the Killer Tomorrows, or whatever the hell he was in back in the day, since like his ER days, like in his early 30s, right up until now, he's always looked like a really handsome 50-year-old.
Oh, yeah.
He just always has.
It's the grey hair helps.
The grey hair helps.
Yeah.
But one of the things I will have to ask, though, because obviously he is mega cool in this, despite the waistcoat. And I will say it now, it would be almost despite the tattoo, but you talk about how things change. Back in 1996, 97, when I would have watched that, me and my friends, or my friends and I, all thought that tattoo that he had was the coolest thing of all time. Yeah. And we put it on, and the first thing I said was like, oh, he's not pulling off that tattoo. And I was like, I guess he's not now, but back in 96, you better believe he was pulling that off.
Do you know where that tattoo came from?
Was it a Maori film?
Yeah. So I've mentioned this film to you many times before, and I've actually shown you a clip of it, the Uncle Bully scene. Great scene. George Clooney just finished watching Once We're Warriors with Tamara Morrison. And it was his idea to have that tattoo. And you get glimpses of the neck bit, but when he takes it off at the end, it's just all down his arm. It's insane. I wanted to ask you a question. We're on about the geckos being brothers. Do you think the gecko line is like the Dudley line from ECW Rest? Like where the Dudley brothers, like Papa Dudley just went around the world just fucking as much as he could. This is the geckos. Like, do you know what I mean? He's just, Papa Gecko is just going everywhere, just planting his seed.
Yeah, and the thing is, like you say, it has to be when you see the state of those two. Like they can't. I'm unwilling to believe that the same mother and father gave birth to George Clooney and Quentin Tarantino. Yeah. Because
Tarantino's a younger brother. My God, Tarantino looks older than him. Like the way.
He really does. I mean, like the hair, the glasses, none of that helps. But. And again, but like you said, maybe he does look younger because as cool and as handsome as George Clooney is, I mean, we did mention, and because of that bit of grey, he does look older. I am willing to believe that he is older. That is the one thing I'm willing to believe. Okay. Just not the fact that they're brothers. Like that's it. But
believability, right? Mm-hmm. I find it hard to believe that this entire film is going because he has enough money to live in that fucking briefcase. Like the whole thing is.
I see. Yeah.
So they stolen the money, and I'm expecting duffel bags of money. They've got a briefcase that probably doesn't have more than like $200,000 in it or something.
I guess maybe, but if they live in the wrong side of the law, and you think 96, say it was 200,000, and they're going over into Mexico. I know what you mean. Yeah, they're kind of making out like they're going to live like kings for the rest of their life once they make it over to Mexico. It is a bit suspect.
The TV show answered it quite well because somebody must have asked this question previously. Because and we'll get into that in Legacy, but the TV show is still a briefcase. But it's 300 million in bearer bonds, which would fit in a suitcase.
Maybe it is links to Die Hard, or maybe if we want to link it back to Tarantino films, you think of Pulp Fiction again, and obviously when he opens the briefcase, you get the gold glow, and he's like, "Are we cool? Oh, we're cool, or we're okay, whatever the hell it is."
But you see him open the suitcase and give Carlos money.
It is just money, isn't it?
So it's really weird.
Maybe it's $50. I don't know, but
we've stretched this film for like 20 minutes already, and we haven't, aside from you mentioning Michael Parks getting shot at the beginning, we haven't mentioned in that fantastic cold open. Like,
it's brilliant.
It's literally John Hawkes, what was his name in there? As Pete Bottoms, the liquor store clerk. Michael Parks as the Texas Ranger. Even did you notice as well? Nancy's dad from Nightmare on Elm Street was on the TV.
Yeah, there's quite a few on there. It's John Saxon, isn't it? Who's like the cop from Nightmare on Elm Street. And I think that was just basically them casting their favorite exploitation idols from like the 70s. Like obviously, Sex Machine is Tom Savini, and what's his name? I keep calling him the Hammer or whatever, but he's from a bunch of blaxploitation flicks. And I think they just had him in it because they're just like, it's just one of these things like we can get away with this, which is unbelievable because this is Quentin Tarantino's first script. His first ever paid work. Yeah. I know obviously he had made Reservoir Dogs, but he'd already sold the script for this, and to have the confidence to come in with this kind of script when he's basically just saying this is all the stuff I love. He's come into the industry like just all guns blazing, like, oh, I'm just going to do what I want, and he absolutely gets away with it. It's unbelievable.
You said the Geckos was like a twins thing as well. How have you not mentioned Kelly Preston was in this film?
Kelly Preston?
Yeah.
Who is she?
She was the newscaster interviewing John Paxson.
Of course, that really weird kind of like when she's doing like the numbers and stuff about how many, and they're like really glorifying like the
Kelly Preston
stuff.
Who from Twins had a massive crush on.
It's weird. I just didn't see. Only now you're saying it, I was like, it is Kate Preston. I had the biggest same, like you said, with Twins. She is so smoking hot in Twins. It just never connected. Like the thing is, the Cheech Marin thing didn't connect for years, but it did this time. I can't believe I didn't pick that up. Even when you said it, then I was like, Kelly Preston. And now you mention it, I'm like, of course it's
Kelly Preston. Yeah,
of course that's.
But that cold open, like you get the hint then as well to the fact that Richie is psychotic. Like,
and I love like they actually did a comparison, in terms of that obsession, like with him being a sex pest is underplaying it, a kind of what's the word I'm looking for, a sexual predator. And it's they sell it off in the same way as in the vampires are predators, because they use that really effective sound. I'm not sure, it's hard to describe. But every time they go from like a first person perspective and he's looking at a woman, there's like a sound, an audio cue in the background, which is like in his head, which is like just conveying intensity. Like he's all about that woman in this obsession that he has. And the only other time you hear it in the film is when Salma Hayek is looking at Quentin Tarantino after his hand gets stabbed, and it's that obsession with blood. Yeah. And I thought that was like quite an interesting comparison. Like he's just so obsessed, and like the vampires are just these monsters obsessed with blood. He's a monster obsessed with sex. And again, they really don't shy away from it in this film. From the very, the opening in this film, that he is both a psycho and a complete lion.
I mean, you get the hint then as well with poor Gloria that he did awful things to her in the hour that Seth Gecko had left. But also then when Kate comes in, Juliette Lewis again, and it's in his mind it's real.
When she turns around, and even later on, like it's not like one of those like he has any doubt. Like back in the back of the camper van when they're going over the border, and he's like, "Oh, that thing you mentioned to earlier. If you want me to do that, like I'll do it." Like, he is totally convinced that what he's doing to these women, he's doing it because they want him to, and it's just like the true sign of an absolute psychopath. But like you say, it's a tiny bit more fun at the start when he's like, "No, he was mouthing to him, help me." It's like, I didn't fucking mouth anything. It's like, but again, all that whole sequence. I mean, I mentioned earlier the fact that for the longest time I thought the first half of this film, because there really is that split. Yeah. There's the first half of the film, and then they get to the titty twister. And I already knew about it, what this film became. I would have loved to have gone into this film like, oh, that must have been amazing. Like when it turned, there's no sign at all for what, like 45, 50 minutes that this is anything other than, as you mentioned, a kind of like road trip between brothers, like this grimy 70s throwback,
Because I said to you, I've said to you in the past many times that my film watching when I was a kid was my mum would go to work at lunchtime. She worked next to the video store. So when she comes home, she'd rent a couple of videos. She'd come back. She'd go back to work in the night. My dad worked nights, so my grandpa would look after me. So in my bedroom, I'm just watching videos. Like my mum was rented. So I didn't know what I'd watch being rented for me at this point. And this is the video store where they don't give you the case.
Oh, the old school ones when they used to put them in like a black case or something.
I had a plastic sleeve, so this was the one with plastic sleeves. So I had nothing. I literally had a video that said "From Dusk Till Dawn." Pop it in.
That's awesome.
And
that's old school, isn't it? Like the fact that even now, if you didn't know much about films and say the closest thing you're going to get to it is say something on Netflix, but you're still going to get a poster. You're still going to get like that brief clip at the start kind of thing. It's like that throwback, like you said, to where you're getting literally handed a blank video case. And all you're getting is the title. And it's like, well, let's see what the fuck this is.
And God bless my mother as well, mind, right? Because I'm 13 at this point. This is 18. Like, do you know what I mean? So
but it was the same. It was the same in my house. I think I've mentioned on previous podcasts where it was like my parents basically tested the water. Like my dad wanted to watch Die Hard. Basically, we didn't get a VCR player until I was about 8 years old, I think. So up until that point, it was just whatever was on channels 1 to 4, I think. There wasn't even a channel 5. And then we finally bought a VCR player, and there was a video shop just down the road from me. And we went down there, and my dad was like, all right, we're going to try Die Hard. And that was in 18. And he watched it with me, and I was fine. And it was like, he was like, well, he appears to be able to kind of disconnect between, like, he knows he's watching a film. There were no nightmares or any of that shit. But basically, Die Hard isn't the most violent film. It's not the scariest. No. And he's just gone, well, he's fine. And basically that was it. It was like I had like carte blanche. I could literally watch anything. And I went straight, we've talked about it before, and obviously we've covered a lot of these films, but I went directly from Die Hard. I've gone to the video shop and I've rented Alien, Aliens, Terminator, RoboCop, all these much more violent, arguably much scarier films. And it was, I guess, lucky that I was totally cool with it. But similarly to yourself, like once I got through Die Hard and my dad was fine, over my house, I could watch anything. It was just you can watch whatever you want.
I love late 80s, early 90s as well in the video shop, because you go in there and you go, excuse me, mate, can I rent this film? What age is it? It's a 15. How old are you? I'm 13. No. How old are you? I'm 15. Yeah, you can rent it then.
Yeah. That's totally what it was, because we used to have the big Cardiff video store, which was down on Richmond Road, which was, I think, it was certainly the biggest video store in Wales.
The one right on the corner. It used to be on the corner.
Yeah. And it used to have there was the kids section was all it was made to look like rock and stuff, and bizarrely right next to the porno section, but that's besides the point. But like you said, there were those smaller independent ones where it was just some dude was running a VHS store literally on my block. And it was just once he knew who you were and your parents were cool with you renting anything, you didn't even have to take your parents there. You just went in and just rented whatever you want, because he was just listen, I know your parents are cool with it. Just, if you want to watch Predator, fucking rent Predator. I don't care, as long as you
many times.
I don't give a shit.
Many times, Predator.
Which is fucking awesome.
But going back to it. So, yeah, so I'm in my bedroom. It's probably, my friend came over from across the road, Sean. We sat there, 1996. We sit down and go, my mum rented this for me. Let's give it a watch. We finished playing at 7 o'clock at night. Let's put it on. And you're like, well, this is amazing. I wonder how the coppers are going to catch him. I wonder how the coppers are going to do this. You know what I mean? They haven't shown any copper that's chasing him yet. I don't know what's going on. And then
the one cop we've seen is dead.
Yeah. So do you know what I mean? So you don't know what's going on. And all of a sudden you get to the bar and again, 13-year-old boys, and there's nothing but tits.
There are a lot of tits in fairness, but again, you forget about all those because the one woman who does pure tits is just so much hotter than everyone else.
Yeah. And so you're watching it and you're really enjoying it and you're laughing at the guy, the little Mexican dude said pussy about 900 times.
That was, again, you got to remember, I know I went through that whole speech and sorry to butt in, but you got to remember, like you said, we were 14, 50 when we watched this. Yeah. The pussy quote came at the right time in our lives, just put it that way.
Absolutely. Because you then go into school the next day, just pussy.
Dude, everyone quoted that. And they played that bar was indeed, he wasn't lying. There was a lot of pussy in that bar.
There was a lot, I mean, I didn't see the horse pussy, but that's by the by.
No, I didn't see that. Or I guess there was snapping pussy. Maybe I don't know. It doesn't matter. So
and then Salma Hayek comes on the screen, and you're thoroughly enjoying Salma Hayek's dance. Like I said, this is 3 years before Dogma, and then she turns into a weird bald man.
Pretty close vampire.
And
not
then,
as bad as Quentin, but yeah.
And then everyone else, and you just look at each other, and we just went, "What the fuck is this?" What is going on now?
Yeah, that must have come as quite a shock because it does. Well, like I said, in my mind, it turned from a Quentin Tarantino film into a Robert Rodriguez film.
Did you see any Rodriguez's
if
film?
If you have any doubt, I mean, I know it wasn't directed by Quentin Tarantino, but if you had any doubt as to whether it was written by Quentin Tarantino, as to whether he does indeed have a foot fetish, I mean, Salma Hayek she nearly sticks her entire foot in Quentin Tarantino's mouth. And it does kind of take the edge off because you're watching this is one of the sexiest scenes. And sadly, it ends with her foot in his mouth. And you're like, okay, that's not quite as sexy, but whatever. We'll just kind of go with that.
Did you see,
that's just his thing.
Did you see any Robert Rodriguez films before this? Or was this your first?
No, I had seen a few. And I guess luckily in his early career, because one of the notes I've got written down here is, Robert Rodriguez, good director, ? Because he has had such an odd career. Because to start off, it was such a great run. Because, you think there was El Mariachi, there was Desperado. I think The Faculty came after this, didn't it? But there was this, and then there was The Faculty. And then obviously a few years later, but you had Sin City, and you're like, those are some really good films. Not necessarily great films, but all really fun. But then you look at his more recent ones, and it's like Machete Kills in Space, whatever it is. Alita Battle Angel is okay, I suppose. Sin City, A Dame to Kill For, not very good. Spy Kids, it's not for me, but whatever. Planet Terror, let's be clear, that's the rubbish part of the Grindhouse double bill if you're comparing it to Death Proof. And Once Upon a Time in Mexico is not fantastic either. So he had this he was really hot out the gates. But I would argue that Robert Rodriguez hasn't made a great film since Sin City.
And that's the thing in it. When you think of Robert Rodriguez, you think of like he's done these fantastic exploitation films. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he hasn't done a lot, like you say. So El Mariachi, Desperado, From Dusk Till Dawn, The Faculty is like a left turn for him after these.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, a great film. But
it's great. We are covering on this podcast.
100%.
We said we're going to go up to 2000s on this podcast. Because I think that film's great. But then he goes and he does Spy Kids 1, 2, 3. Once Upon a Time in Mexico, and what was the other one he did? The one you didn't mention, and I just had it. The Adventures of Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
Yeah, well, that falls into the same thing as Spy Kids, doesn't it?
He hasn't done a lot of films either, which is really weird.
No, he's done like a lot of TV, and I know he's got his production company. So, like, don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting for a second that Robert Rodriguez hasn't been hugely successful. I just can't quite decide, outside of those early films, whether he is indeed a good director, or certainly a director that I'm a big fan of. Because, you know, when you really did kind of put them side by side, I remember being so excited for Grindhouse because it did have, remember, this is in a world where I still thought that Quentin Tarantino directed the first half of this film and he directed the second. I was like, oh, well, now they're just going to do two films and they're both going to sit side by side. And they've obviously got similar tastes. And again, on paper, it sounded like a perfect marriage. And I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. I think Death Proof is fantastic. I mean, part of that could just be like Kurt Russell just looks cool as shit in that film, even though he's a complete dick. But I really didn't like Planet Terror. And it was ticking all the boxes. And I was just like,
Death Proof was Tarantino's though.
Have I mixed them up? No, sorry, Death Proof. Sorry, Death Proof was the Tarantino one, yeah?
Yeah, Death Proof was
Tarantino. Sorry, did I mix them up?
Planet
Terror was the Rodriguez one. Sorry, Death Proof is the one I really liked. That's the Kurt Russell one. And the Planet Terror one, which again, on paper, I was like, this looks amazing. And I watched it, I was just like, It's like one of those things, kind of like with a lot of his, like with Machete Kills and stuff like that, they work great as trailers. They're some of the best trailers of all time. And this sounds like a great idea. But stretch that over 90 minutes, that idea starts to wear thin pretty quickly, and I think that's the problem with a lot of his films. But as I said, started great because El Mariachi, Desperado, such good, you talk about Salma Hayek, that's what put her on the map, is just how great and how unbelievably, there's no escaping this. She is quite the woman in that film as well.
To seeing what he does, because they've announced that he's, I don't know, maybe directing an episode or two, but he's doing the Zorro TV show.
Yeah, well, that'll be interesting. I mean, Zorro's kind of, primed for a comeback. It's been a long time. I still have very fond memories, again, of the Antonio Banderas films from the late 90s, early 2000s with Catherine Zeta-Jones. They're really well-made films. They actually film a little bit like Robert Rodriguez films, although for the life of me, I can't remember who directed those. But yeah, like, I still come back to the idea, though, as good, obviously, this is very much Quentin Tarantino's and Robert Rodriguez's kind of show, but I still feel like the thing that makes this film to a certain extent is that star turn from George Clooney. I keep coming back to that. He is what makes it. And it comes at like a weird time in his career. Like supposedly it was like Tarantino directed him in an episode of ER. And, obviously he wasn't a movie star at the time, and if you weren't around back in the mid-90s or old enough, it's maybe easy not to kind of get just how big a deal ER was and how big a deal George Clooney was in that show back in the day. Like it was like the biggest show on TV outside of maybe Friends. And he was unequivocally the show's biggest star. Yeah. And to come from that, and, he walked away, 3 or 4 seasons into the show kind of thing and went into movies. And for this to be like his kind of breakout scene. And, we always think of him as being the kind of quippy, charming character kind of thing. He's a complete arsehole in this. And it went to show, I think, from early doors that George Clooney wasn't scared to kind of push the boat out. Because if anything, like his kind of, I guess, lower points in his career of when he's tried to go mainstream, because in terms of a timeline, it was quite a weird start for him because he had this in 96. He had One Fine Day, which was a much more traditional.
That was the Michelle Pfeiffer one, wasn't it?
Yeah, which is quite a charming film. I quite enjoyed that. And I was convinced Out of Sight came really early, which is another absolutely fantastic. That's cool.
That's 2000, I think.
That's 98 Out of Sight.
98 is okay.
Yeah. That's a Steven Soderbergh film.
He did the film that should have ended his career before that, though.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. I thought that was all before Batman and Robin. Batman and Robin was 97.
97, yeah.
So it came just like to go from this and thinking, oh, he's the coolest guy in the world. He's going to be like the biggest star. And then like 97 to have such a potentially derailing moment that early in his career. And I think it's actually made him a more interesting actor because, again, instead of going, all right, maybe the mainstream, and he's been in mainstream films, but he started leaning into like making fun of his persona. Like a lot of his best roles are with the Coen brothers. And it's basically them making fun of him. Like that's all they do in Coen brothers films. They're like, oh, he's a handsome idiot. We'll run that across 7 films. It's unbelievable.
Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou? And
he's so good in Oh Brother. I fucking love that film. But even something like, I think totally underrated is Intolerable Cruelty, where it plays up on him as being this kind of like charming, handsome. Again, he's like a smart idiot almost kind of thing. And I know some people think it's like the Coen brothers. I think there was a bit of a backlash because some people thought it was them trying to do a mainstream romantic film because it was him and Catherine Zeta-Jones when at the height of their career. If you go back and watch that film, it's weird as shit. It's got all the weird character names. He's a bizarre leading man. It's a really odd, massively underrated film. So if you take anything from the Dusk Till Dawn podcast, it's that you should go and watch Intolerable Cruelty because it's massively underrated. But yeah.
Quentin Tarantino joked as well, didn't he? That he really, like you said, he wanted George Clooney after directing him in ER. Mm-hmm. And he joked that it was really good as well to see him going from saving people in ER to putting people into ER in this film. But
and he really does.
I question that because I've never seen him not kill somebody from this film. Like he hasn't injured anyone to send them to ER. He's literally
he's killing everyone.
They're going straight to the morgue. They're bypassing ER and going straight to the morgue.
Does he just injure anyone? I mean, Cheech Marin, he just punches him in the face, I suppose, at the end when he delivers.
Oh, Carlos. Yeah, but he's not sending Carlos to the ER, is he?
No, he's just giving him a bit of a bloody nose, isn't he? No, everyone else I think he kills, in fairness. Yeah, he is just sending everyone into ground. Like, it sounds good as like a soundbite, but no, he's just killing everyone. He's everyone. Again, because you're comparing him to his brother and because he's so charming and stuff, you kind of allow it. And because they've got that weird burgeoning relationship, and we haven't mentioned Harvey Keitel yet, who's also fantastic in this film. Like, they have that oddly charming relationship, which kind of evolves as the film goes. A lot of it does happen towards the end of the film when things, we mentioned earlier, just escalate so quickly. Like, and I think it was just they wanted to keep the running time down because they have such an emphasis on getting to the titty twister that once they get there, you think there would be like at least a holdout scene, especially once they've kind of killed off the first wave of vampires. And you think, oh, well, they're going to have this bit when it's almost like, to use Scott's T-shirt, Assault on Precinct 13, which is a nod to John Carpenter, I think is Robert Rodriguez's favorite director. I thought there was going to be more of a holdout. But no, the bat's getting super quick. Like, the end of the film is at 100 miles per hour. And it is, and at some point, they just forget about all the rules because they have a quick run out of like, all right, we've accepted immediately that there are vampires. They quickly lay out the rules of vampires. Again, when Sex Machine's really charming, it's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure Peter Cushing did that all the time. Like, he's watching all the classics himself.
Together, yeah.
And those rules work for about 5 minutes. But by the end, you've got Sex Machine, who his transformation into a vampire is fantastic, by the way. But he turns into a giant rat for reasons we don't know.
Why just him?
When the Hammer turns into a vampire, suddenly crosses don't work on him anymore. When Scott is super fucking lame. He's the lamest thing about this film. But when he's being like chewed on by all the vampires and he tells his sister, Kate, kill me, Kate, and she shoots an arrow at him, he just explodes.
Do you know what
for no fucking reason.
Do you know what? We'll go to it because you think he's the lamest character. So does Juliette Lewis. So does Kate. Because I had that written down. Kill me, Kate. You've got to kill me. No, I can't. Okay, I'll shoot you.
Well, talking about that whole idea that the end of this film is just not interesting character, I think it's just about speed and being cool. They do the same thing with the Greco brothers. Like when he turns into a vampire and they go to kill him, and George is like, don't you fucking touch it. He's still my brother and stuff. And you think there's going to be this big kind of moment where he refuses to kill his brother. And he kind of goes, go on and I'll kill him. It's just like, it lasts for all of 2 seconds. It's exactly the same with Juliette Lewis. She's like, I can't kill you, but I can now. Yeah. Let's just get this over and done with.
She shoots. And did he explode? Because it wasn't a crossbow. It was Seth's revolver. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
It was Seth's
revolver.
It was.
Yeah.
So did he explode because the bullet had a cross on it?
I have no idea. And he's only just been bitten.
Why
like everyone else, they make that whole thing, they mention the timeline. Like Harvey Keitel goes to great lengths to have that whole speech about, in about 30 minutes, I should turn it. Like he knows the deal. He knows all the rules. Like earlier, Sex Machines turned in 2 minutes. The Hammer turned almost instantaneously. There's no consistency at the end of this film.
And I love as well that there's no consistency in how, like, what your looks as a vampire are. Like the Hammer has
all over the place.
Fred Williamson has no neck when he becomes a vampire. Literally, he looks like
he's just shoulders and head.
Well, he looks like a head, an uncircumcised penis. It's just all it's all skin.
He does have a big head in fairness, even when he's a human.
So he looks like that. For some reason, they decided to, like you said, turn Sex Machine first of all into this weird. And I'm obsessed with necks at the moment. This weird, thin-headed, really thin-necked vampire. Like, so thin, his head gets ripped off by a whip and he becomes a massive rat creature.
Yeah, obviously.
Harvey Keitel turns, like, his ears become pointy. And
he looks maybe the most traditional of the vampires, I suppose.
And my other question as well is, what's the rule on how they die? Some of them melt, some of them explode. Really explode.
I mean, are we just going to refer everyone to Lost Boys for that? Because they have that whole speech about like no two bloodsuckers go out the same way. So right. I was willing to accept Lost Boys rules and just say every vampire goes. Some go quietly, some explode, some death by stereo, the usual shit. So yeah, I'm willing to go Lost Boys rules on every vampire going a different way. But the inconsistency in vampires is quite galling at times, but never more so than when the headless Sex Machine turns into a rat. I just think it was just like, it'd be cool if we had a giant rat in this film.
Do you know what would be fantastic at that moment when he became a giant rat? Is if you saw the crotch gun just pop out.
That'd be quite good.
Yeah. So we've got to the end, right? Mm-hmm. Like we've been at the end, like this entire podcast, but we got to the end. They've managed to get into the storeroom, and I asked this question at the beginning of what we're going to call it a rant, right? I asked this question.
You can call it a rant because it was a rant. That's totally acceptable.
If you're a vampire, you're pretty soft. Because they were stabbing people with the ends of pool cues, not the sharp end. The one with the rubber. You know what I mean? Totally. So they're stabbing people with the rubber end of a pool cue and killing them. Are you going to keep your pump action crossbow accessible?
It does seem strange. Again, it comes back to this idea that, I don't know, maybe things have got too easy for them. Because, like I said, when things do kick off, they do kill nearly everyone else. They just seem to have run into the wrong group. I mean, even the band who I absolutely love, what they call Tito and Tarantula, like the music is legitimately fantastic.
The lead singer of that band was in Desperado as well.
They're absolutely fantastic. They're a real Chicano rock band. Yeah. But I love the fact that when things kick off, so when they close the door and everyone turns into a vampire, all of a sudden they're playing with like human body guitars. I'm like, where the fuck did they come from? It's like they had them behind the scenes. It's like, wait, it's about to kick off. Can I get the guitar? Can I get the human body guitar? No, yeah, wait. Let them do the reveal first. Then we'll go grab the stuff. It's so bizarre. And the idea, the fact that they're usually so successful that they play on their human body guitars, everyone gets mauled. They're just not accustomed to running into these badasses, because once the dust settles on that first battle, and you've got Frost, and you've got Sex Machine, and you've got George Clooney. Is George Clooney's character Gordon Greco? Is that it?
Seth Greco.
Sorry. Jesus Christ. That's, again, someone completely different. And they're kind of like, what are we going to do now? Let's go kill that fucking band. The band just kill themselves. Yeah. They just I can't deal with them. We're just going to explode. They just
fuck you, everybody. Good night.
They just is that it?
Notice the instruments. I mean, you're not going to not notice the guitar, right? It's a torso.
The guitar you can't miss. Yeah.
It's a torso with an arm shoved up its crotch and the head just bouncing around. Did you notice the saxophone?
The saxophone is the one I mentioned. I went out of my way because, like you say, when you watch it, it's hard not to be drawn to the guitar. Yeah. Like with the head bouncing around. I was like, I have to check out the other instruments. And the one that got my attention was absolutely the saxophone.
The saxophone. He's basically blowing into a spine, a spinal column that, again, has the head turned the wrong way. So there's the music coming out. And the only thing I could tell from the drums was like maybe one of the symbols was just a skull. Like I don't think the poor drummer didn't get to have any unless the actual drums have human skin over them.
They probably do. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say that the skin is actual skin. It would be a real oversight if it wasn't human skin on on the drum sets, that's for sure. But yeah, like, and it's like this all kind of leads towards like the most ludicrous tuning up scene ever. Like this film is like tongue in cheek. It is self-aware, and when, like you said, they have the bolt gun and Scott has the super soaker, and you look at those and you think, well, they're kind of silly. I actually think the stupidest weapon is actually George Clooney's Seth's like really ineffectual, I don't know, steak gun. Is that what you call it? It just feels so awkward.
It was literally like, you really didn't need because basically he took one of those jackhammers, didn't he? One of those what looked like why like it's the most random set of things the truckers seem to be hauling. But
I mean, there are a lot of trucks there, but why they would keep weapons that are so dangerous to vampires is completely beyond me.
He managed, so it's a jackhammer thing, from what I can tell. So why did he take out the metal tool that goes into concrete and put a wooden stake into that?
Visuals, right? And it's visuals. Just looks cool.
Also, it looks really heavy when he's trying to start it up.
Super heavy.
But when he's able to just turn it instantaneously from one side to the other to get the other vampire, it's like, dude, that is made of fucking styrofoam.
I don't know. I just think he would have been better off literally with just a stake in his hand or a pool cue kind of sharpened.
He did quite well. He did it well with a rubber-ended pool cue and his revolver. Why he needed that, I don't know. And
it is bizarre, like at the end when Kate suddenly becomes, she's just out of the blue, an absolute crack shot with a bolt gun. Yeah. And then, again, Scott just being name throwing like,
he's got water balloon, he's got condom grenades. Like he's literally, the only thing he's missing when he's pulling him off is bandolier. He's just missing pretending to pull the pin out with his teeth before he
The coolest one is undoubtedly
Keitel's,
like with the shotgun and using the baseball bat as like a cross, and then using to pump it and shoot. Like that was badass.
Did it anger you though that he's using the wrong end to hold? It always gets me that he's using the thick end to hold.
Oh, the thick end, yeah, it is kind of strange. I guess maybe because the fat end wouldn't fit through the kind of pump action.
But he can still put it through, but then hold the thin end. Why is he?
Yeah, I suppose.
But I loved it then when because you keep calling him Hammer, Fred Williamson.
Frost, isn't it?
When he stabs him.
Yeah.
With the gun, and then he's cocking it through him as he's shooting.
He has so many cool moments. I mean, he's not in a great deal, but the bit when he like tears the vampire's heart out with his bare hand, and he impales them all on like the sides of the table. And I think that was like supposedly one of his rules. Like, I'm only going to be in a film. I think one of the rules that he doesn't get killed. And I think his kind of like caveat was like, I don't get killed, the vampire gets killed.
Yeah.
But, he's like, he has all these rules. Like, I've got to kill everyone. I've got to be a total badass. And for the most part, he totally is in this film. I actually love his speech. Of course he's from Nam. Of course he killed all those. But it's such a needlessly, no one asked for that really grim story about him being behind enemy lines and killing all the Viet Cong. It's just as out of the fucking blue.
That's done really well though, because he's telling this story and it shifts to Sex Machine's focus where he's looking around because he's hearing these things just happening to him now, and yet all you're seeing then is Fred Williamson's actions. But then
doing like the stabbing motions, like he's showing like him physically stabbing every single Viet Cong, and he's like,
and I just love that Sex Machine's hands just come up over his shoulder. It's a great visual.
And it is, and it really is. Just how ludicrous this film becomes, because of course, it has its comedy elements throughout, but you go back to that first half of the film, there's no sign of not only there being vampires, but of the tone that this film takes in the second half. There's like most of the kind of comedic elements very much come from that traditional Quentin Tarantino script. Like a lot of the stuff that happens in this wouldn't feel out of place in a Reservoir Dogs or a Pulp Fiction. It's violent and it's funny because it's still a kind of quote unquote movie world, that Quentin Tarantino movie world where it's almost the real world, but not quite. But by the end, when you've got giant rats, and as you say, like there's those visual gags with the hands coming up over the top, it's a completely different film. Like you can't believe that it's got from there to here in the space of 60 minutes. It's absolutely bonkers, absolutely bonkers. And it runs right through to those final scenes. And like you said, you know, that I love that sequence with George Clooney at the end when he comes out. It's like psychos do not fucking explode. It's so cool.
I love how they all like the sunlight hits the disco ball.
Why would they keep making a disco ball? Surely one of the vampires is putting up and go, I don't know, guys, this feels like it's going to come back to haunt us. I mean, this feels like a really dangerous thing. Like, we talk about the guns in the background, but to have a goddamn disco light in there, come on.
They're hanging it up.
Vampires, the worst.
They're hanging it up and they're going, is this a bit of foreshadowing? Like at some point, is the light going to hit this and we're all just going to like, do we explode if sunlight hits us or do we just melt? Like what happens? Well, we're psychos, aren't we? We're psychos. Yeah. So, I mean... Like, I
just feel like there's one, like nobody listens to Vampire Dave in the corner. It's like, guys, come on, guys, you can't put that up. All you need is one bit of light to come in and we're all fucking like, stop being a pussy, Dave. You're the fucking worst, Dave.
I love how you called
insisting that they all do their taxes, you know?
I love how you called him Dave as well, because now I just picture our Dave. Vampire Dave's been out, our Dave in the corner going, come on, Rob, come on, Liam, come on, dude, just why?
Don't put up the goddamn disco light. What the fuck? You're asking for trouble, guys. Yeah, and they were indeed asking for. Like I said, you know, you look at that final scene with the temple and all the trucks, and I'm amazed that they had that much success. Absolutely, because these vampires are dog shit.
Not just nobody's noticing as well. If you notice that final shot as it goes up as well, it seems to go down into the valley and then go up the other side of the valley, and it seems to go up higher than the temple is, the titty twister is. With just burnt out trucks. There was a scene where there was a skull on top of a truck. Like you'd be standing outside the titty twister, looking over the distance, going, right, there's a burnt out truck. There's a lot of actual trucks. Maybe why is there a valley down there just full of trucks? That's a Mayan temple. What the fuck?
No, like surely someone's going to take a look. Surely someone's going to take a look. So yeah, I just don't think they planned it out. Like I said, I'm just amazed.
We haven't even mentioned Danny Trejo. Who I fucking
Which is
love.
Bizarre. I mean, I love Danny Trejo, but Danny Trejo, this is 1996. Yeah. He was already 52.
Yeah.
He was like, it's one of those things, I can't believe how old Danny Trejo is when I see him, because obviously he's got like a weathered face. But Danny Trejo has been Danny Trejo for the past 30 years.
Yeah.
Like he's, you know, in the same way Steve Martin has been Stephen Martin since Roxanne in 1986. Danny Trejo has just been Danny Trejo since the early 90s. It's ridiculous. I was like, oh, maybe he was in his 40s. No, he's 52. He was like a relatively old man when he made this. But yeah, Danny Trejo, as we all know, will indeed live forever. But he is very cool in this. But it's amazing how many they actually kill off. And again, that idea that the vampires are shit. Like, I'm willing to give the benefit that they just had an off day, that it was just bad luck, that they had the Greco brothers in there, they had Sex Machine, they had Frost, they had all these badasses. But you know, once Frost and, you know, one of the Greco brothers and Sex Machine are all dead, or certainly on their side because they're vampires, like by the end, it's pretty much just, you know, Greco or George Clooney and Kate. That's all that's fucking left. Yeah. And they hold off like 20, 30 vampires until, of course, the disco light incident.
He fucks Kate off at the end. I want to go back to Danny Trejo.
I love the fact that he fucks Kate off at the end. Like, it would have been lame if I actually had forgotten. It'd been so, I was like, Kate, go with him, and he's just like, dude, you're not coming with me. Here's some money. Like, again, the kind of he does like just enough right to get away with it.
Yeah.
Like, he gives it like, you know, because how much money he's got. It's like, you know, he probably gives like 20, 30 grand. It's like, no, good luck. You're off on your own. I know your family's dead, but you're not fucking coming with me. There's no way.
I may be a bastard, but I'm not a fucking bastard.
Fucking bastard,
like, dude,
yeah.
You've caused a whole family to die. Like, but okay.
Yeah, I would argue that you are a fucking bastard. But again, you know, he's taking off the coat and you're just like, he's cool as shit though. You can't have Kate running around with him. No way. And again, you know, you talk about other than Scott being absolutely lame, and I forgot the name of the actor, and I can totally get over that because he's terrible in this film. You know, Juliette Lewis is fantastic in this as well.
She's great.
Like, and she's fantastic in most things.
And she was brought in again by Tarantino because he loved the From Natural Born Killers, which he wrote the story for, but then it was totally chopped and changed to what was on screen.
It was tons of pieces.
But she is fantastic in it. Can I go back to Danny Trejo really quickly? Because he's got a documentary and just talks about the stuff he does for his community, how he got into acting on the Runaway Train with Eric Roberts, and he's on camera as saying,
"Love that film."
Yeah, it's a great film. Yeah. He's on camera as saying, I'll take any job. Like, I love it. I love acting. If they ask me to be in it, I'll be in it. I don't care. And I love that. The reason why I'm saying that is because I just looked at his filmography, and in 2022, keeping in line with this film we're doing now, he is in a film called The Vamp Father, where he is the Vamp Father. So it is basically Vampire Godfather by the sound of it.
It really is, yeah. I mean, if you went through his extensive IMDb, he's been in so many films. His hit rate is pretty low. But again, it comes back to the idea, like, he's just happy to be in films, which is cool. And I think it's one of the reasons people just like seeing him on screen. Like, I'm not convinced the whole machete kills thing. Like, people necessarily want to see 90 minutes of Danny Trejo, but he's like the equivalent of, like, to bring it back to baseball from last week, a pinch hitter.
Yeah.
Like, he just comes in, he does his thing for like 10, 15 minutes. He's fucking awesome. And then he just leaves. That's absolutely fine. Like, too much of Danny Trejo can be a bad thing, I think. But if you come in like, a super sweet chocolate bar, you just have a little nibble, that's a nibble of dark chocolate or something. And it's like, yeah, that's plenty. That's all I need.
Take a stab in the dark at his actor credits. Like, how many?
Oh, it's going to be in the 222.
Ooh. You're off by 198. 420.
You fucking asshole! I thought it was gonna be off by like 7.
420.
You're only off by like 50%. Motherfucker.
420.
I was not close at all.
No.
Son of a bitch. All right, so that's a perfect place to wrap up this film.
Yeah.
All right, love and hate. So love, I've got George Clooney. I've mentioned it so many times we've been in this podcast. I think he's absolutely fantastic. Salma Hayek doing the dance.
Yeah.
Number 2. And number 3, I do love Frost. And specifically that speech, his Nam speech. I just fucking love the Nam speech. So yeah, there are many things I love about this film, but those are the top 3 for me.
I'm gonna cheat a little. I'm gonna put George Clooney and Salma Hayek number 1 together, because
that really is cheating because they have nothing to do with each other. But yeah,
no, not together.
Okay,
but
let's
like,
go with it.
As the 2 actors in this show, I think they're great in this film. Sex Machine.
Yeah,
I think it is.
He's great. It's fantastic. No arguments from me. From Tom Savini, it's Sex Machine.
The reason why I love it, and I always stick to it, because again, as 13-year-old me, I never saw it coming. The twist. The twist. The
titty twist.
The titty twist.
It's
great. It is.
No, it really is.
Such a great turn of phrase. It just goes from one to the other. And
it's such a dramatic tonal shift. I can't think of many films which it's not quite to this extent. But the first one that pops into my mind is, say, something like Bone Tomahawk, where for the first half it's quite a traditional Western before it turns into a cannibal horror show in the second half. But even that doesn't have the tonal shift that this does. I don't think there's anything quite. Audition, maybe. If you didn't know what Audition was, the Japanese. Yeah. Was it Japanese or Korean? I think it's Japanese. That's going to be quite racist if it is Korean. But anyway, that kind of like the first half, it almost feels like it's going to be a romantic film. And then, needless to say, if you haven't seen Audition, the second half is not. It turns into a full body horror film. But again, I'm not sure if anything quite matches this. Certainly nothing as mainstream as this, certainly.
No, so that's my 3 loves.
Hate, nobody likes rapey Quentin Tarantino. That's just the worst. The death of the Hammer or Frost, that happens a little bit too quickly for my taste. And I'd go as far as to say the tattoos that aren't cool anymore. Like I said, in 1996, they were the coolest. Like, that was the epitome to me, my friends and I, of like, if you could have a tattoo, you get the George Clooney tattoo from Dusk Till Dawn. Now I'm like, I'm so glad I didn't get the George Clooney tattoo in 1996. So I'll go with the poor aging of a previously awesome tattoo.
Well, now you've put me on the spot and said nobody likes rapey Quentin Tarantino. I'm going to have to put rapey Quentin Tarantino as number 1. You
kind of have to put that or Salma Hayek's foot in his mouth. I'm not keen on that either, to be honest.
Yeah, it goes back like when we
did Super Mario Brothers a couple of weeks ago, and you had that random pleather foot just kicking that dude in the face. What is it with feet at the moment? It's just
I don't. Well, the thing is, you expect it from Quentin. They even have it's not the only foot scene. Like you have the very clear foot shot of Juliette Lewis earlier in the film.
Yeah,
but that's not quite as egregious as especially coming off the back of that scene, because it's such a sexy scene, and then it's like, oh, did you really have to put your whole foot in this? Oh, never mind, whatever.
Scott is useless.
Oh, I should have put Scott.
Scott is absolutely useless in this film. There's no point.
And he's gonna sell out his old man at the border as well. He's such a pussy. I don't think he's a great actor, sadly, in a movie with just so many great actors in it. Yeah, no, I think I should have put Scott as well. So yeah, you win on that one for sure.
And again, it's not a huge one, but it's, come on, dude, you should fucking be able to see that it's a Mayan temple. Like, there's just so much. There's a fucking. There's just a scrapyard.
And the disco ball. See, now I'm thinking of all these other things. I should have put the disco ball.
There's a scrapyard down there full of trucks.
My new top three of hate are the Mayan temple, the disco ball, and Scott. There we go. I'm going with those. I'm totally rewriting the whole list. Thanks to you.
Yeah, that's my three as well.
All right, cool. So facts, I haven't actually got that many. I think I already mentioned the fact that Scott wears an Assault on Precinct 13 t-shirt as a nod to John Carpenter. The Ezekiel 25:17 speech from Pulp Fiction, the famous one that Samuel L. Jackson delivers, was actually written initially for this, and it's supposed to be Harvey Keitel's character, which obviously wouldn't have been as cool, so I'm glad it made it Pulp Fiction. And I think you'll notice there's a scene when you see him stab one of the characters for the first time, that the first thing they notice is the green blood on the blade.
Yeah.
And they actually changed the blood from red to green to avoid an N-17 rating in the US, which was quite surprising because there's still a lot of, pretty violence in this
with
film.
everything that's going on. Yeah. It's the blood
green
that
blood
pushes,
is fine.
It's the blood that pushes it over the edge with everything that's going on. Yeah.
I've got a bunch of others, but we've covered them to one extent or another already in the discussion.
So I've got quite a few, but I'll rattle through them as quick, and I'll skip a couple. The line, "No thanks, I've already had a wife," was improvised by George Clooney. Robert Rodriguez never intended it to be in the final cut, but after the studio included the line in the trailer, he felt obligated to include it in the film. This I like. This is so just sleazy. Salma Hayek has a real fear of snakes and always refused to be near them. Naturally, when she read the script, she knew her phobia would prevent her from taking the part. Robert Rodriguez conned her into thinking that Madonna was ready to nab the part, so Hayek spent 2 months with therapists to overcome her fear.
Like, supposedly she said she had to go into a trance to deal with it. And I had read about that before I rewatched the film. And when you see it, for somebody who's scared of snakes, like that snake isn't like, when you think of like the comparative one would be Britney Spears in the Slave For You video, which obviously a nod to this, when she's holding the yellow python like on her shoulders. In this python is getting amongst her. It gets in under her crotch. It goes right round her neck at some point. So there are parts where it looks like it's going to kind of wrap itself around her in a dangerous way. So for someone who's afraid of snakes and to keep her cool like that, fucking fair play to her.
Yeah.
Could not, even for someone who's not necessarily afraid of snakes. I think everyone's afraid of snakes to one extent or the other because they are dangerous. But, you wouldn't fancy doing that at all. I mean, in fairness, I don't think anyone wants to see me with a snake doing a sexy dance and putting my foot in Quentin Tarantino's mouth. That's going to be upsetting for everyone involved. So, yeah, let's stricken that from the record immediately.
If we did T-shirts, I want that as a T-shirt. I want you with your foot in Quentin Tarantino's mouth with a snake around.
And I'm not even dressed sexy. I'm just wearing my normal clothes.
But I mean, to be fair, you're 11'2", so you probably wouldn't be able to fit you on a t-shirt.
That is the official height this week, 11'2". I love how you're enjoying this. Like by any other metric, you're also a giant. It's like you're like 99.9% of the times you're the tallest person in the room. It's like this fucking guy's 6'7". Oh, sorry, 11'2", motherfucker.
I don't have to look up to many people. I mean, I'm 6'4".
You really don't.
I don't have to look up to many people, but the fact I look up to you is like, how's the weather up there? Like that stupid fucking line.
Yeah, well, you rarely get to say it. I get the thing is, if I ran into someone and they were 6'10", I'd probably say the same thing. Yeah. So the word, the thing we get, so funny, so funny. Anyway, sorry.
No, that's fine.
Facts.
when Sex Machine is throwing around the other characters, Tom Savini actually punched many of the actors, including George Clooney. I love the fact that
I'm willing to admit that Tom Savini's a fucking.
He's just running around, just punching people, just for the fun of it. Just
yeah. This is what we did in the 70s, bro. You know, fuck.
Cheech Marin, when he's playing the customs agent, his name badge says Oscar Marin. It's the name of Cheech's dad, who is an LAPD officer. So I like that little. That's a nice little nod. That is right. Let me see if I can. The band playing a Titty Twister. Oh, you said it, Tito and Tarantula.
Oh, the name of Salma Hayek's character, Santanico Pandemonium, is actually named after a Mexican horror film, which I thought was, because it's a pretty ridiculous name, and it's a ridiculous name because it's named after a Mexican horror film. So that was pretty cool. We've done that one as well. We've covered too many facts already.
There was actor ones here. Tim Roth and Steve Buscemi were approached to play Pete Bottoms, but neither could fit it into their schedules.
They both would have been pretty busy around 96, that's for sure.
Yeah, too right. The Mexican criminal hideaway El Rey is taken from Jim Thompson's novel The Getaway, of which Tarantino was an avid fan. Interestingly, El Rey was omitted from both film versions of The Getaway in 72 and 94. Which is... Robert Rodriguez started a film network in America, which did the Dusk Till Dawn TV show. It did it was from English-speaking Mexicans in America. So it was a lot of that. It was Mexican culture or Spanish culture, but in English-speaking. And they did from Dusk Till Dawn. They did Lucha Underground as well. But the reason why I'm saying it is because he called it the El Rey Network. It's defunct now. I mean, I think it only lasted like 6 years, but
well, I guess that kind of leads us like quite naturally into legacy, actually. And this is one of those things you'll probably know better than me, because I know there was obviously that TV show from 2014 to 2016. And I always thought it was one of those things that kind of came and went relatively quickly. But there were 3 seasons of this TV show. Yeah. And people seem to quite like it. Like, fans of the show, like, absolutely swear by the show. I apparently rather wrongly just went, oh, it's a fucking TV show based on the film. I don't want to see that. But, you know, obviously Robert Rodriguez was involved. And, you know, it was successful and, you know, good enough to run for 3 seasons. And I think a lot of people are quite sad that it didn't have that 4th season.
It would have gone on to a 4th season if the El Rey Network didn't...
Yeah.
So that's the reason why it didn't go on. But
so it was a bit of an odd one, because it was, I guess by most standards, it probably was one of the more successful TV adaptations.
So it is a decent TV show based on a film, because you get a lot of them these days. But I mean, we said we had a League of Their Own TV show that we didn't, and there's a Ferris Bueller TV show and things like that. But
some of them you're amazed to hear it, aren't you? Like, there was a fucking TV, Jesus Christ.
But it is a decent one. But it really delves into the whole mythology of everything. So the first season is basically leading up to the Titty Twister. The vampires...
the first season, so they basically remade the movie, but then they kind of embellished and expanded upon it. That's right, yeah.
So it goes on to the vampires then as well. The vampires are, they're like Mexican snake lore. So I mean, I watched it in 2014, so I can't really remember all of it.
Yeah.
It goes into... Carlos has a more... bigger part in it. He's played by Wilmer Valderrama from that 70s show where he was Fez. And El Rey is actually like something to do with... El Rey is not a place. It's leading people there to actually get them to go to the Titty Twister kind of thing. You know? And I'm butchering it, but then it goes into like Sex Machine is played by Jake Busey.
Oh, that is a strange one.
Yeah. And
that is a really strange. That is a left turn in casting. But
it's really worth.
I mean, I like Jake Busey, but that's an odd one for sure.
And again, going into Legacy, it's quite funny because you probably wouldn't have, but I definitely have. Harvey Keitel's character in this, I can't remember his name in this. Sorry, what was his name?
Harvey Keitel's character is Jacob Fuller.
Yeah. So Jacob was played in the TV show by Robert Patrick. Who was actually the star from Dusk Till Dawn 2, Texas Blood Money.
Yeah.
And from Dusk Till Dawn 3 then was The Hangman's Daughter, which was a prequel, which told about how Santa Monica Pandemonium became her. Do you know what I mean? So it's from the West. So it's during
are they actually any good though? The
movie, number 2 was all right, just like tongue in cheek. Number 3 is okay because it's telling the story of. I mean, they're both direct to DVD. They're not. It brings back
but
Danny
have they
Trejo.
have they got that kind of like direct to DVD quality though? Like, you know, like are they relatively poor films kind of thing? You know, when I hear these films, I haven't seen them, and I just assume they're all going to be like 2-star films.
Dude,
you know,
they're probably 2-star. I saw them when they were released. Again, it was when we were renting probably DVDs then back in like the early 90s. Late 90s. So
Although the main thing I took from that is just it's one of those things with Harvey Keitel. Whenever people say his name, whenever I think of him, I just always and I know he's had so many famous roles. I just always immediately jump to the car scene from Reservoir Dogs. You're gonna be okay. Say the goddamn words. You're gonna be okay. I just always hear that running through my head whenever I think of Harvey Keitel.
For some reason, I seem to link him to the weird pimp from Taxi Driver.
That is a weird jump. That is an odd jump. Yeah. But yeah, he's been in so many films. Why not?
Yeah.
Why should I go straight to the, you know, and even Reservoir Dogs, they're probably more famous sequences than the "You're Gonna Be Okay" sequence in the back of the car.
I will say,
Tim Roth is acting his ass off in the back of that car, by the way. Jesus Christ. He can stand to tone it down just a smidge, I think.
I will say that I loved Harvey Keitel, because we haven't mentioned him a lot in this, but I loved him from Dusk Till Dawn. His soft-spoken, the way he approached the character, I think is fantastic.
Yeah, I think, you know, with all these kind of larger than life, it does kind of ground the film to a certain extent. And the great thing about him, he's so kind of like, you know, you can see he's sweet-natured, but when he turns at the end, like, it doesn't come as a surprise. The way he talks to George Clooney's character throughout, you can see that, you know, he's a good man, but he's not a soft touch.
Oh no,
he's
he's fighting some demons, some inner demons.
Yeah. But you know, when he does actually have to fight, it doesn't come as like, oh, that punch has come out of the blue. It's like, you know, like all that stuff is under the surface, and he's working very hard to kind of keep himself in control, maybe at all times. So and so much of that is just Harvey Keitel being Harvey Keitel, but they do that with limited dialogue, despite the fact that there is so much dialogue, certainly in the first half of this film. A lot of that just comes from the fact that he is indeed a great actor, and you just totally buy into him as being this fundamentally good man, but one who it does have the potential to turn, that's for sure.
Yeah. Should we move into video games?
Well, I've got score before video games, so I'm just going to do that just because it's what's in front of me. I mean, the score's really good. I mean, Graham Revell, very industrial style kind of soundtrack. You know, this guy did The Crow, Street Fighter, Power Rangers, again, getting another mention. The Craft, Titan AE. I haven't thought of that film when I think of Titan AE, I always just think of Lit doing the soundtrack, very, you know, turn of the century stuff. And Freddy versus Jason, a film I have actually a bit of a soft spot for. I really like that film. But it's really the soundtrack that kind of steals the show in this film. You know, a lot of Texas blues, a regional style of blues, ZZ Top, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimmy Vaughan. Yeah. But even amongst all that, I think everyone just thinks of the Mexican band, Tito and the Tarantulas. Like, you know, they have that great song when they walk into the bar. It's so catchy. But then a big part of, obviously, the Salma Hayek sequence is the music they're playing in the background. Yeah. And very few bands explode. There's just no two ways about it. So, there's great music throughout this film, but Tito and the Tarantula absolutely steals the show for me.
That's a way to exit a stage, isn't it?
That is absolutely. You know, some people kind of smash up the guitar stuff; they just legitimately explode. So God bless them. As for video games, there was a 2001 third-person shooter from Cryo Interactive. It had pretty bad reviews. I watched the video; it looks very rough, very much of its time, and even bad by the time kind of style.
I completely.
Did you really?
I played it.
Oh, well, you can speak to it with a much more kind of
it was terrible
detail than myself. Yeah, it looked. I was aware that it was released back in the day, but I remember it having bad reviews then, and I was like, all right, I'm not playing that. So it is indeed terrible. Yeah,
it was glitchy as fuck. But I really appreciated the story that Seth was caught, and now he's on there. It sounds like Escape Plan. What is it? What's his name? Sylvester Stallone and Arnold
Schwarzenegger.
Because basically Seth is in a prison, is floating on, basically a floating prison now on a defunct oil.
I know there were bad sequels to that film, which I never got around to watching. I actually quite liked Escape Plan.
I didn't mind Escape Plan. Don't watch the sequels.
No, I'm not watching the sequels. I think it's just because Arnie has two fantastic moments. The bit when he goes psycho and starts speaking German, you so rarely hear him speaking German on screen. It's fantastic. And the bit at the end when he has the full-on kind of True Lies-esque kind of raised eyebrow before he shoots everyone down. I love that moment. That was fantastic.
What would I want to see from a video game?
What would you want to see?
You're gonna I don't know if you hate me for this or you might agree with me. I want to see Naughty Dog do it.
That's fair enough.
It's got that character development within it. I love Naughty Dog for the storyline. But also, if you look back at Uncharted or The Last of Us, they do monsters very well.
They do.
Like they do action scenes with the monsters very well. So I think you get the decent story, you get the action set pieces, I think Naughty Dog would hit it out of the park.
They really were. I mean, and I think I've used both of these examples before, and I apologize if I have. It shows a lack of imagination. But the two that kind of jumped into mind would both be potential DLC for existing games, essentially, or just basically taking a game and reskin it. But I guess that's what we're getting at here. One of them, and I think it's just because I love bringing up Sleeping Dogs, has been this totally underrated third-person action. And we both love Sleeping Dogs. You mentioned that before. And they already did a great horror-based DLC for that, set in Hong Kong with was the zombies, I think, in that. And I think basically you just do that, but you just have it set in Mexico, and you just have, that kind of mix of open world narrative, but you just have vampires in it. And the same is very much true. I know it's a period thing, but you could, consider when the sequels went, you could still go there. And you think of Undead Nightmare from the first Red Dead Redemption. Yeah.
I was thinking
like taking this kind of existing world, and you just suddenly, what would it be like if you just suddenly plumped zombies, or in this instance, vampires into it? Only the difference is here, I guess, would be that the vampires are already a pre-existing part of that world, and you're finding out about it. But that's
in regards to the lore from Dusk Till Dawn, like I said, Hangman's Daughter was set during the Wild West, and it was how Santa Monica Pandemonium became. So you could absolutely have that game set to just as she's setting her foot now, and as they're setting the titty twister up. So absolutely. Yeah. No, I agree with you. That'd be good. I'm not
gonna lie. Naughty Dog was the first thing that jumped into my head, but I was like, you'll probably say Naughty Dog, and we've said it so many times. But again, Naughty Dog in particular, in terms of I actually think, despite what I said, would probably be the perfect fit. You think like an 11, 12-hour action game where it's kind of half open world, half kind of linear, and you have that mix of cinematic action. Perfect for this. Absolutely. So scores and recommendations. Do you want to go first? You picked this film. Makes sense.
Yeah, I'll go first. I still think, no matter how much I slagged off, the crotch gun and things like that, it's still an enjoyable watch. I still think it's a 4. I think it holds up quite well. So for me, it's a 4. And yes, I have recommended, and I would absolutely recommend this to people. And I would love to recommend it to people that don't know anything about it, but hopefully go into this film not watching trailers or anything, going into this film.
Yeah, I think that would be maybe it'd be different if they were a bit younger. Maybe I'm kind of overplaying just how impactful this is. But for a lot of people, even if you didn't see the film, I feel like it kind of made its way into the cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah,
the imagery and stuff. I'd be surprised if anyone didn't know that Dusk Till Dawn kind of turns, becomes what it becomes in the second half. But yeah, if somehow, like you said, if I was telling someone, have you seen Dusk Till Dawn? And they said no, and they're like, I don't know what it is. So well, don't look into it. Just go and watch the film and just enjoy it. That would be obviously the best way to enjoy it. But I think that'd be a relatively rare beast. But I'm exactly the same as you, mate. 4 stars. I think it totally holds up. There are 1 or 2 special effects in the second half of the film, which are a little bit ropey by today's standards, but still they lean pretty heavily into physical effects. So it's limited, to say the least. And for the most part, this film still looks great. It sounds great. Again, going back to the first half, and I actually think the first half of this film is better. The second half is what everyone remembers. You've talked about it on previous podcasts. The first film might be the best one, but everybody conflates what they remember from the sequels. They handpick films. I think we talked about Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah.
Weekend at Bernie's 2 is rubbish, but everyone remembers stuff from number 2 being in number 1. And I think I had the same issue with Beverly Hills Cop. Well, I just assumed he put the fucking jacket on, the Detroit Lions jacket. That's from the sequel. It's not in the first film. And I think in this film, the best stuff is in the first half of the film, when it's more dialogue heavy. The second half is slightly ludicrous, but it's what everyone remembers.
Yeah, 100%.
But I love the fact that in the first, it really has that great sense of place. This film feels dirty. It feels grim. Their car early in the film is a really cool car. It's covered in filth. Everyone's just covered in dust and grime all the time. It's a gross film, but it's a really good watch. Totally holds up. 4 stars. And I would absolutely recommend this to just about anyone.
Yeah, 100%. No, I absolutely agree. Before we move on to your choice next week, we've got mail.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
So we've got mail.
I want to introduce some sort of whenever we do the mail section, I want to introduce some sort of jingle.
But would it be? Is that? Am I making that up? Is that the old AOL one? Where you go,
Yeah.
You've got mail.
I think so.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking very much of Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan when I hear that in my head anyway. But hey,
So whether that's just from the film that actually exists, I'm not too sure. But we'll stick.
maybe
with
I've just made it the fuck up. Who knows?
Yeah. Right. So from Damon Revelet. He's going on about a league of their own, and this is really interesting.
Damon, I know Damon. Like I did a Chinese course with him, and we went over to Zhuhai in South China, and I met him there. He's from Texas, funnily enough.
Oh, there you go.
It's Texas. He is simultaneously super American because he's from Texas, but he has the most British sense of dry humor and such British taste, unbelievable. I only knew the dude for like a month while we were doing the course up there. Such a fucking cool guy. So hey, Damon, you're awesome. You know, this is a guy I met in like 2006. Just cool guy. So anyway, sorry.
We really need to start getting mail from people you haven't met over the world. Then, so
I know. The thing is, though, it does make everything international. Last week, Liam Pieska from Australia.
Yeah.
This week, Damon from Texas in the United States. So yeah, we're an international podcast for sure.
I mean, the best I'm getting is from Dan, who lives in Newport, like 12 miles away from me.
It's not Cardiff, it's Newport. Why not?
So, hey, you guys.
He's close to the English border. It's almost.
I can imagine him laughing as he said this as well, because he starts off the email with "Hey, you guys," because he's
awesome.
giggling because obviously, the name.
Oh yeah, it's a little.
Love the podcast and really enjoyed the A League of Their Own episode. I haven't watched the movie in forever, but I do have a personal connection to it, as I was an extra when they were filming up in Indiana. It brought back a lot of memories of dressing up like a 40s kid and watching them film the championship game against the Racine Bells. I also remember Tom Hanks being the only actor who came over to talk to us when we got there in the early morning, as well as Rosie O'Donnell entertaining the crowd. I should definitely watch it again. I doubt I'll be able to see myself in the crowd, though, even with the HD. Anyway, keep up the good work, and I'm looking forward to the next one, Damon. My question for you, Damon, is...
Awesome.
Well, I mean, you're best friends with this guy, and you didn't know he was in a league of their own. Come on, Lee.
I had no idea. I just have very fond memories of him and I going to a little bar in Zhuhai the first night we got there and getting absolutely shit-faced. It was very fun. And then buying cigarette. There was like a cigarette machine outside. And we're like, we're going to buy the cheapest Chinese cigarettes we can find. And there was the equivalent of 16 pence for a pack of 20. And they legitimately tasted like shit. You know, like that Austin Powers scene when he drinks. It's like, my God, this coffee tastes like shit. It is shit, Austin. Like, I could have legitimately been smoking Chinese shit. I have no idea, but I was that drunk.
Damon, you need to let us know if Tom Hanks actually did a puppet show, because I want to know what the puppet show was. Like, what were the puppets?
Yeah, that was the big thing, wasn't it, that we brought up last week, that he was entertaining the crowds, you know, with a puppet show of all things. So that's quite bizarre. But yeah, that is such a cool, nod that one of our listeners was actually in the film. That's very cool.
And if you do rewatch the film and you see yourself in there, send us a screenshot. Let us know where you were in the film.
Yeah, we'll put it up on the webpage and stuff.
But thanks for that.
We'll put it up on Facebook. You could have a webpage. We're not that professional. What the fuck am I talking about?
We'll put it up on the interwebs at some point.
Yeah, we'll get them up on those interwebs. I don't want to do an American accent. I do apologize. Jesus.
But, I mean, if anyone has any emails or anything they want to send us in, please feel free. It's heyyouguys80s@gmail.com.
Yeah, but only if you've got something as awesome as Damon. Like, if you weren't in from Dusk Till Dawn, don't fucking waste our time. Like, just don't bother. You know, if you're an extra or you had a speaking part, preferably in Dusk Till Dawn, please send us a message. Or if you're just like,
please somebody send it in who doesn't know Liam. Like, honestly, just anything from somebody who doesn't know Liam would be great.
Yeah. That we have listeners outside of our friend group. He was like, "Oh, we've got an international Damon." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I know Damon." Son of a bitch, that's not good. So,
although I am doing misjustice to, I'm trying to find his name, Glenn Lash, who sent us back last year, and we still can't find that Cat People film he recommended. So we need to. I
don't know who that is. So there we go.
Well, there you go.
And let's just say he's from fucking, I don't know, Indonesia.
He's from California.
Well, there we go. That's
right.
Awesome.
What are we doing next week, mate?
Next week, we are doing the first ever 15-rated film I saw in the cinema, 1997's Paul Verhoeven directed Starship Troopers, a film you can watch on many different levels, to say the least. I'm amazed that some people don't see, where that narrative is going, but hey-ho, we'll get to that next week. But I have such fond memories of seeing this in the cinema, because, as I said, it was one of the first kind of 15/18 rated films I went to see when I was younger, and it really did the trick. I mean, this film is violent as fuck. The first half is so violent, very Paul Verhoeven. But yeah, like, I think that, like, back in '97, this film had a huge impact on me. I've got a funny feeling it's aged incredibly well, and certainly, the political narrative. I was going to say in the background. It's not really in the background. It's clear as day, but hey ho.
I am so glad you said Starship Troopers. You went, the very first 15 film I saw in a cinema in 1997, and I started to panic. Because the very, very first 15 film I saw in the cinema was in 97 as well. Mm-hmm. Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
Sadly, it's weird that you've got this weird connection to Mortal Kombat Annihilation, because the first film you saw it as a 15. The last film I ever saw at the Monroe Cinema, a much-loved cinema back in Rowth, Cardiff, where I grew up, I went to see Mortal Kombat Annihilation twice. And that was it ended up being the last. I went to see it because, why not? Like, I did enjoy the first one that came out, and it was garbage. And I just remember one of my friends wanted to go and see it. And I said it was bad, but they're like, no, we'll go and see it. And I went to see it again. And I could legitimately count the number of films I've seen twice in the cinema on one hand. It's so limited. And sadly, one of them is Mortal Kombat Annihilation. And yes, it has this kind of place where it was like the last time I ever saw in the Monroe. It's kind of like the first ever movie I went to see at the cinema with on our first date with my wife. We went to see fucking Die Another Day. Jesus Christ. And again, that was the second time I saw that piece of shit as well. Because I went to see it with my dad when it came out, because it was a new Bond film. Of course I go and see it. And then it was just like, I was out with her, it was on our first date, and we're just like, well, whatever's on, we'll go and see it. And it was Die Another Day. But this was like 2000, or what was it, 2002, 2003?
Yeah.
So this was back in the day when people went to the cinema to like make out. So it actually worked out really well. So we just kind of made out for most of the film, and we didn't worry about missing it because So that is the trick. If you're on a date and you want to make out in the cinema, go and see a really bad film. You don't want to see a good one. Go and see Die Another Day. That absolutely does the trick. But anyway, next week,
Stop, love. I'm trying to watch the film. Just stop.
Jesus Christ. Like, it's an invisible car. This is some fucking awesome shit.
But
that Korean guy's had, plastic surgery to look white. This film's amazing. It's got Madonna in it, for heaven's sake. Jesus Christ. What a film.
I'm looking forward to rewatching this again. I've seen it a few times.
I assume you're not talking about Die Another Day.
Oh, fuck no. We're going back to Starship Troopers now.
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat Annihilation. I actually don't know which one I'll watch ready for next week now. But no, I saw it a couple of times. I've seen it a few times. Once again, I've seen the sequels. So we'll talk about that in Legacy.
I have not seen the sequels, which I'm absolutely fine with.
Yeah, no, be absolutely fine with it. But no, I remember enjoying this film. I've always enjoyed this film. So it'll be good to go back and rewatch it.
Yeah, again, a lot of... there is some CG, but quite a few practical effects. So, I got a Michael Ironside.
Yeah.
Very Michael Ironside in this film. So, I've got a funny feeling, despite the fact that I haven't seen this film for well over a decade. I've got a funny, like with this film, a good feeling that it's going to hold up pretty well. So fingers crossed. And for those who are planning on watching it ahead of us recording next week, it is available on Disney Plus, I believe. So if you've got a Disney Plus subscription, you can watch it on there. I'm not sure if it's on Netflix.
I think it might be on Prime as well.
Oh, on Prime as well. So you should be golden, but it's definitely on Disney Plus, which sounds like a weird sentence, but what it is. But as always, thanks for listening on. This has been, Dusk Till Dawn. Thoroughly enjoyable podcast for a thoroughly enjoyable film. And join us next week for Starship Troopers. Cheers, everyone. Goodbye.
Cheers, guys.
Oh, and before we forget, here is Rob with all the finer details. Got to get through those, dude.
Yeah, so basically you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at HeyYouGuys80s. We're also on email at HeyYouGuys80s@gmail.com. Please feel free to drop us any recommendations, any corrections or omissions we may have missed from any of the films that we've covered. Just get them in. And also, if you could, please leave us some 5-star reviews. That would really help us. And we'd like to thank, as always, Darry Fletcher at Darry Doodles for the fantastic artwork that we're now producing. Thanks for that, mate.
Cheers, Darry.
Thanks again for listening, and we will see you next week.
Cheers. Bye.
Hey, you guys!